2023 comes to a close today. And I can tell you, Ranger fans do not want this year to end.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Baseball fans, welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, how could I have a lower third where I claim my name is Sully? I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for over a decade now. And when the calendar page flips over tomorrow, it will be my sixth year as a host of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And in case you're wondering, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And if you're listening to us every day this year and every day next year, so the next year starts tomorrow, make sure to put on the hashtag EverydaySully. All right. He's been in the waiting room too long. You know, 2023 will be remembered for many things in baseball, for many moments in baseball. It was a pretty entertaining season. There was certainly great moments in the postseason, but for one fan base, they don't want to hear it from anyone. This was their year, the year they've been waiting for their whole lives. And I figured what better way to finish 2023 than with a member of Ranger Nation. World Series champion Ranger Nation, Brice Paterik. Where are you? I'm going to bring you on board right now. There you are. How you doing, Brice?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Yeah. No, every single show since the World Series, I've been making sure to mention the Rangers are World Series champs about 11 times a show, I think is my minimum. And I'm just going to keep doing that until they aren't, because the Rangers are 2023 reigning World Series champions. And boy, does it feel good.
You have your banner already up there.
I do. It was the only thing that I've bought myself. I saved my Christmas presents to be given to me by my family. I figured I'd let them have some stuff to give me. But yeah, that's the one thing I wanted to make sure to get up that banner. And so the 2010 AL pennant is behind me now.
And you know what? In so many ways, that's so poetic. It would have been more poetic if it was the 2011 and said 2011's behind me now. This is a really special World Series year, I have to say. When I got to the point where I didn't really have a dog in the fight in the postseason, and I said many times on the podcast, if I can't have my team in, then I want to see one of two things: an all-time great World Series or a generational moment. And we got a generational moment. I for people who aren't Ranger fans, you don't understand the kick to the groin that Ranger fans have had for generations. And they haven't had the publicity of the Red Sox or the Cubs or other teams that have been that have had heartbreaking situations. But the Rangers fans have gone through a lot of heartbreak, and this was a year that, let's face it, a lot of us didn't think was going to happen, and some of us didn't think it was going to happen in 2023.
Yeah, a lot of us, I mean, even myself included, there were a lot of times where I myself doubted the 2023 Texas Rangers. This was the most just high and low team, and they don't get the national publicity. I mean, from 2010 to 2016, they were one of the best franchises in all baseball, but since 2017, they've been
Bad.
mediocre to irrelevant to bad. I mean,
Yeah,
for
they're
the
a
most
100
part.
some odd lost team 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully they've only lost 100 games once, I guess twice in franchise history since moving to Texas, unlike some other teams that needed to lose a whole bunch of games for many, many years in order to be good. But the Rangers, their turnaround happened so quick, it almost didn't have time to register of how fast it was. And so for a team that had had so many, forgotten by many people, but not for Rangers fans, just tragic moments in the 2011 World Series, the 2010 World Series wasn't tragic, but it was still painful. 2015 and 16 losses in the ALDS to the Blue Jays, the 2012 just historic divisional collapse, losing it with Josh Hamilton ocular keratitis and losing the first ever one game wild card game to the Orioles. Like, it was just, there have been a lot of bad moments for this franchise that people just kind of forget about, and now none of them matter anymore,
Right.
which is just a beautiful thing.
I was always thinking that throughout my life, the Rangers always had very good players on their team. And a lot of Hall of Fame pitchers passed through Texas. Not just Nolan Ryan, but Fergie Jenkins and Burt Blyleven and Gaylord Perry all found their way through Texas in one way, shape, or another. They always had MVP candidates on their team. Whether it was going in the 70s with Jeff Burroughs, but also Ruben Sierra never won the MVP, but he probably could have in 1989. Juan Gonzalez won two MVPs in 3 years. Most people forgot that even happened. Pudge Rodriguez, when A-Rod was there, winning the MVP there. They had some wonderful teams throughout the years. The obvious game to pick at is 2011, when they were one strike away from winning in back-to-back innings.
Mm-hmm.
And to have the double barrel collapses, I mean, that was grotesque and became a game that for Rangers, as a Red Sox fan, I'm familiar with them replaying all the horrible moments. You can't do a montage of recent great World Series without Nelson Cruz leaping and the ball over his head and everything like that. The 2012 team, I think, is from an outsider, because that year I thought they were like, okay, enough of this. This is our year now. And until about September 8th, the hell with that. Until the last week of the season, I thought this team's winning the World Series. And they didn't win the freaking division. And that collapse to Oakland was I think one of those staggering moments. And then and of course the next year they lose a one-game elimination. There were so many times that was this close to being a dynasty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. And that 2012 team, I really think that might be the best Rangers team ever. The offense in 2011 was just insane. Like, people forget about Mike Napoli going absolutely nuclear for a couple years for the Rangers. That was a year of like everybody and their mother was like fantastic in 2011. But 2012, they added Yu Darvish that year. That was his first year in the big leagues, and he was solid. They had Matt Harrison, who was really, really good that year. Derek Holland was solid. Colby Lewis was always a solid contributor, and the bullpen was just locked down.
Yeah.
Joe Nathan is the closer, saving 37 games. Mike Adams, Tanner Shepard was okay that year, but Robbie Ross and Alexi Ogando, like, that was a really good team. And I believe it wasn't. Neftali Feliz was going to be like the savior. He was the closer in 2010 and 2011. Mm-hmm. But he was a starter for so much of his career, and he was holding like upper 90s through 5 innings in Double-A. But they needed him as a closer in 2010 and 2011. They did that. They tried to convert him back to being a starter that year, and he had Tommy John surgery that year, and he was just never, ever the same. He pitched 42 and 2/3 innings that year and had an ERA just north of 3, and he was really, really good as a starter. And then it just never quite came back to him, and things just kind of really went off the rails from there for him.
By the way, I'm not going to go to a whole what if with the Rangers. I may talk about this, but I think one of the most underappreciated Ranger sort of alternate universe was if they had a adequate bullpen in 1996, not only would they have beaten the Yankees, but the Joe Torre era probably would have been over in 1 year. Joe Torre's managerial regime in New York would have lasted one season, because remember the Rangers behind John Burkett and Juan Gonzalez won game 1 of that series in 96 against the Yankees. This was coming off of the Yankees collapsing against the Mariners the year before that cost Buck Showalter his job. Torre came in. No one really knew what to make of him. The Rangers beat the snot out of the Yankees in game 1 and were up 4-1 in the 3rd inning of game 2. And I remember being in New York thinking, like, God, the Rangers, they're going to sweep them. And they had a lead in the 8th inning. The bullpen collapsed, and the Yankees won that in extra innings. The Rangers had a 2-1 lead in the 9th inning and decided to let Darren Oliver try to finish the game. He lets up 2 runs. They wound up losing that game. And in game 4, the Rangers were up 4-0 in the 3rd when Pavlik collapsed. But if 2 of those games went the Rangers' way, I'll give them 1 bullpen collapse. If 2 of them went their way, the Rangers win that series, and the Joe Torre era is over like that. And maybe Johnny Oates and the likes of, we do think about some of the people who are on that team, like Pudge Rodriguez and Juan Gonzalez and Will Clark and Rusty Greer, and Dean Palmer. All of them would
Dean Palmer had a great year that year.
Yes, he did. I think about, because the other times they played the Yankees just took them to the woodshed. But in that year, the Rangers had the upper hand in every one of the games. And, but you know what? That's all past. That's the beauty of this for you. You can even watch those clips now. It doesn't matter. That's all erased. They've pulled a Men in Black and sort of flashed them right out of your head. Do you know why? Because you will always, always, always have 2023. Say it with me. You only have a few more hours left.
2023 World Series champ. World Series champion Texas Rangers. God, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful for you. And let me just tell you something. When we come back, we're going to go over some of the things we learned from this year and see how much of that we can retain moving forward to 2024. Hey, as the calendar page switches to the new year, it's time to remind you that's the best time to get into FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads and player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get in there. Win some money through FanDuel, an official partner of the National Football League. Also, quick reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts like Brice or hosts of the national shows like me, covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Brice Paterik, as we're having our final moments here in 2023, your favorite year in baseball history. By the way, is this your favorite Rangers team of all time?
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, just this, the ups and the downs, and just them actually doing it, like, let alone the way that they did it, which was very 2023 Rangers of them, of just making absolutely no sense at all, being completely unpredictable, having moments where they looked absolutely sensational and moments where you're like, this team is going to do absolutely nothing. I mean, it was as late in the season as September, where I was bemoaning in my group chat of fellow Rangers fans, like, they're going to waste the season. That they were so good for the first 3 quarters of the season, and they're going to poop it down the stretch, and it's going to be so embarrassing, and it's going to be so frustrating.
Well, remember,
but they didn't.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think people should learn from this is there's a couple things. First of all, to paraphrase The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, don't panic. The Rangers were in an absolute free fall to the point where I had a show where the title was Texas Fold'em. And by September 8th or 9th, the Rangers had fallen further than a game out. They were like a game and a half, 2 games out of a wild card spot in the middle of September. And remember, there's a point where the Mariners were in first place by themselves in
That was
September.
a fun like 2 days.
Yeah, but still, it was like it wasn't like in April though. It was in September. Kids were back in school on the East Coast, and the fact that the Rangers had fallen out in mid-September, where they were beyond a game out of a wild card spot with only a couple of games left to play. That's when you get to the point like going like a lot of things have to go our way to make this work. And this is where having a manager who has been there and done that helps. I will go to my grave saying a big part of that was you could look to the person who's in charge of the ship, and he never gets too high, never gets too low. And if they had someone who was panicking or someone who you look at like going, oh, this is my first year doing it. I've never even coached on any level. I'm friends with the GM. We went to Yale. Instead of going, oh, the guy's there is going to the Hall of Fame as a manager. We're things are going to be okay. I'm going to go to my grave saying that was a big part of why that it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the playoffs as well. I mean, the reason that they, after the Game 5 ALCS loss, it was the most devastating sports loss of my life. More so at the time.
More than 2011.
Yeah, it felt worse because I don't know any Cardinals fans. I know way too many Astros fans. I was never going to live it down. I was like, as soon as they got to the ALCS, I was like, great. This is a successful season. Just like hope you don't play the Astros, because if you lose there, even though this is a great first step in the immediate rebuild, like you're never going to hear the end of it ever. And it's going to be miserable. And, there have been so many different times in all the different like post-game shows where they're asking every Rangers player, like, was there some moment after Game 5 where someone stepped up and gave a speech and said, this is our moment we got. And they're all like, no, we just kind of took a day and said, wow, that sucked. All right, we'll go get him next time. And the rookies all like looked around and saw Corey Seager and Marcus Semien and all the veterans just like going about the business like normal before Game 6. They're like, oh, okay, so we really are just going to treat that like it's just one game, even though it was like terrible and awful and what have you. Okay, is that how we do things? Okay, that's how we do things. And they did. And they walk into Game 7 like they own the place, and then they own the place in Game 7. The first ever baseball playoff game that I've ever been to, 1-for-1. It was first time I've ever been to Houston for a baseball game in that stadium, which was pretty great first game in Minute Maid Park.
First lesson we have: don't panic, and that means, but also don't worry too much about the histrionics. I remember all this stuff I remember hearing. Jason Hayward gave this inspirational speech, and that motivated the Cubs. Really, you need motivation in Game 7 of the World Series. That was the most overrated thing I've ever heard. I have a feeling if Cleveland won that game, we would have heard that Mike Napoli gave a speech. Of course. But the fact that they didn't is like, yeah, just everyone calm down. We're okay. So they didn't panic, but they also didn't go rah-rah. It's like, no, even. So first step, get yourself a manager who has been there, done that. Doesn't necessarily mean that you get someone with 1,000 years worth of experience, but get someone there who you can look at and say, okay, this person, we're entrusting the team to someone where we don't get the sense it's their first barbecue. I think another thing we've learned that the 2023 Rangers learned, we did talk about this before, but as people are going into the offseason, when you have a chance to improve your team. And the best way to turn 100 losses into a World Series title in 2 years is make your team better. If you have a chance to make your team better, do it. And even if it means taking a risk. It was a risk to sign DeGrom and to sign Eovaldi. One worked, one didn't. Take the risk.
They both worked because the Rangers won a World Series, so therefore, for all eternity, all of the moves worked. Also, your point on signing good players when you can, it was ahead of schedule. It did seem very much ahead of schedule, but they looked at the next 3 years worth of classes of free agents, and they saw the hitters that they could add, and they went and they analyzed and researched which ones they could get, not only like the best players, but the best fit to establish a clubhouse and, an actual identity for the team. And they said Marcus Semien and Corey Seager are those guys. Those are the building blocks. They had a lot of good, okay players, young players that they could, build around them, and, not as young players, Adolis Garcia and Jonah Heim and Nathaniel Lowe, but they didn't have stars. They said, okay, well, it may be a little earlier than we're not going to go win in 2022. But if we want to win the next, 3-4 years, then these are the best guys that are going to be in the market in those couple of years. So let's go get them right now. Even if it confuses some people, it makes sense.
Like me, I was confused, and lots of Rangers fans got on me for a lot of Rangers fans got on me for criticizing some of the moves. And do you know what? I was wrong. I was wrong. My criticism was unfounded. I should not have. I should not have. I was wrong in my. I felt that Eovaldi wasn't going to give him a full season. I was right that I didn't think DeGrom was. I turned out to be 100% right on that.
Well, Eovaldi gave them 3/4 of a season and a postseason, so I guess that adds up to one full season.
That's true. What Eovaldi gave them was he is a proven winner in the postseason, and once he got there, that is like this is why you got him. This is why you got him, and he was everything you could ask for. And the Rangers did what the Orioles didn't. The Rangers saw a need. They made the move, bringing in Montgomery. They made some other moves as well. Obviously, Scherzer was the big splashy move, but the one that really worked out was Montgomery. And what happened in the division series? The Rangers feasted on the Orioles pitching, and it became 100 wins for Baltimore. Moved on. You have a chance. You have a chance to have a major league manager. Get him. You have a chance to improve your team. Do it. And even if things are spiraling out of control, be calm. A winning streak is right around the corner. And if you don't believe me, may I present to you the 2023 World Series champion, Texas Rangers. Again, quick reminder that Locked On's launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts on Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So, Brice, as we're wrapping down New Year's, it's in a couple hours, it'll be 2024. When you think about this, besides the final out being made, what's the one memory when you think about this run? What's the first hit moment that comes to mind?
Man, there's so many to choose from, because this was such a long season, honestly, of so many highs and so many lows, and defending that I thought this team was actually good from like about May 1st. I was like, no, this is a legitimately good team. Whether they finish the season winning the AL West or not, who knows? But I believe that this was actually a good team from that early on. You can go check my podcast for the receipts. But I think for me, the thing that's always going to stick out is watching Game 7 with my buddy Matt in Houston. Like, it was an all-time great moment, and something that I will always cherish. And seeing on the big video board, I had to take several pictures of it just for posterity, and to tweet at Astros fans who get cagey in the offseason. But just saying AL champion Texas Rangers across their board in Houston was just absolutely delightful. And just the sheer, like, oh my God, this is happening. Oh my God, this is real. This is real. Just because we were not believing it. Even up like 7 runs, it was like, okay, are we sure this is going to hold? Are we sure this is going to hold with this bullpen? And it did. And it was just absolutely beautiful.
By the way, another great thing about Brice Paterik is the World Series. They were 3 outs away from clinching the World Series, and he had people you normally go to, but he looked up and he said, "Hey, the guy with a career 5.08 ERA and one career major league save, let him finish out the series." And you know what? He saw that he was better than his stats in the postseason, and he said, "Let Spores finish it out." And he was the one threw the glove down and gave you. I love it when the guy who closes it out. I love it when it's a Mike Montgomery. I love it when it's a Mike Timlin. Someone's like going like, who clinched the World Series? Josh Spores did.
Yeah, he did. And that 5.5 ERA or 5 career ERA is definitely misleading. Like he has got
Yes.
he is a guy who, when he is on, he is absolutely insanely good. He is like, I feel like a very typical reliever because like relievers these days, there's so few that you can trust from year to year. And Spores would have a great month and then he'd be kind of hurt and working through it and have an awful month. And then he'd have a great 2 weeks and then be hurt and on the IL for, 3-4 weeks and come back and try and pitch through it. And as recently as like September, I was like, all right, you're done with the Josh Spores experiment. You had a good couple runs, but like it's not a trustworthy guy. And then he was basically their best reliever the entire postseason. Same with I was about to say Neftali Feliz.
What if I came back in time in mid-September when the Rangers fell back a game and a half of the third wild card spot, and I said, "Hey, Brice, not only are the Rangers going to win the World Series, but it'll be Josh Spores on the mound earning the save, and not because it was like the 18th inning or something like that. Nope, it's the 9th inning. Your normal relievers are ready to go." And Bochy said, "Spores is my guy."
I would have laughed and said, "Yeah, that's just stupid enough to work."
All right. Well, look at what are you thinking about this team going in to defend their World Series title? This is, by the way, my new tradition at Locked On is I'm going to have the winner of the World Series appear. The Locked On host of the team that won the World Series would be my guest on the final day of the year, so we can experience the final day of the year together. I know you want to be here a year from now.
I do.
What do they need to do to get back?
The funny thing is, like, I don't care. I mean, they can do a lot. There've been some unfun discoveries with the Bally Sports scenario and money being tighter than it was before, and maybe Jordan Montgomery's not coming back, and Max Scherzer's probably gonna be out till midseason, and they signed Tyler Mahle, but he's gonna be out till midseason, and I'm like, oh no, World Series trophy, go brr, I don't care. Like, I will just go watch clips of Adolis Garcia hitting home runs in the postseason and Corey Seager's game tying homer and every moment of this postseason and be like, I literally don't care what happens for the rest of time. My one baseball dream has come true and nothing can take that away from me. And the thing that you said the night that the Rangers won it all of, the next time your team goofs something up, you'll be like, oh, I really wanted that, and it doesn't matter. It was literally like 2 weeks later. Like every single other sports thing that will ever go wrong for the rest of my life, I'll be like, oh well, who cares? Let me go watch Josh Spores close it out again and spike his glove because nothing else matters for the rest of time. It's absolutely beautiful, and I will literally, if I ever get tired of watching it, take me out and back and shoot me in the head because something is horribly wrong.
And look at, I'm not going to dignify shooting you in the head, but as a Boston fan, when they collapsed in 2011, and it was a huge, monstrous collapse, and my response was, "Oh man, that was it. That was it," because life has moved on. Well, look at Brice Paterik. Thanks for sharing your final moments of 2023 with me. And this has been Locked On MLB for December 31st, 2023. And if you'd like to sync us up with the final 10 seconds or so. So the clock it's now 11:59 and 48 seconds. Let's count it down. 10, 9, 8, 7. Come on, Brice. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! And for Ranger fans, you better hope Brice is back. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan, about to sing Old Lang Syne, and you can call me Sully. Should old podcasters be forgot and sell Bill